Hello and welcome to my demonstration of my CSE 335 final project. Everything in this project will be laid out according to the class project phase 3 requirements, which will basically include a PowerPoint slide containing the project idea, class diagram, MVC diagram, the capabilities and limitations of the project, the lessons I learned, and suggestions for improvements on the class project. In addition to that, afterwards, I will also be giving a small demonstration of my app via Xcode. So let's go ahead and take a look. My final project is called Docs Orders, and the docs comes from doctors, obviously, because the users of the app will be interacting with doctors. The idea of the project is to have an app to help people manage their health information because I feel like there are not enough apps which are doing this sufficiently. So basically help users by keeping track of their medical conditions so they can show doctors exactly what is affecting them at that moment without forgetting. For people like me, I go to the doctor quite frequently, and sometimes I go and I tell them a few things that are troubling me at that moment, but I forget about everything else. So this is a good part of this app because it helps the user keep track of all their health information so they can accurately tell the doctor everything that is wrong with them at that moment. This is my class diagram. Basically, we start off with a splash screen, which goes away after 7 seconds. So it'll basically have an intro, and the user can read about what the app does and things like that. After 7 seconds, it'll go away, and the tab bar view controller navigation will basically open up, which defaults to the hospital view screen. But we'll get into that later. So basically, the tab bar view controller just adds a tab in which you can switch back and forth between different view controllers with the click of a button without having to go back. So that's very useful. So the first thing you're going to see on here is the hospital view controller. And what that is basically it has an API, and the API will display as a label the user's city and country, which is very useful because you'll know where you're living. Also, what it does is it displays a map which will show all of the nearest hospitals in your area. And that's good because if there's an emergency, you always know where to look near you. And it will show, I think it's within a 3 mile radius using place marks and things like that. Another tab which we have access to is the condition table view controller, which is basically a table view which holds all of the user's condition information. So as you can see here, we have a condition array of conditions, which is a NS managed object, which consists of a string called name and another string called description. And this is very useful because, once again, I've already said it multiple times, but I want to drive in the point that it's very important for the user to be able to keep track of everything that's wrong with them. So if you go to the condition table view controller, you will basically have the ability to add and delete a condition from the table using core data. All of the conditions are stored in core data, and the way you add them is you would click the plus button and you actually get a alert controller which pops up, and you will be able to input the name and the description into the alert controller, which then stores the information both into core data and into the table view itself. Now, the last tab we have is an article view. This is a very simple WK web view, which displays a website of health articles in case the user wants to, be up to date on health trends and wants to make sure they're keeping up with a healthy lifestyle. So that is very useful as well. Now, this is my model view controller architecture. So as you can see here, what does the model do? It basically holds the core data. It communicates. It helps communication between the view and the controller, and it basically notifies the controller of data changes in real time. It provides functionality for adding and deleting information, interacts with Google API. Obviously, the most important part of this is holding the core data, which is the way I structured my MVC architecture. So basically, the model notifies the controller about addition details, if you should edit, if you should delete, um, any user profile information. When I say user profile information, I'm talking about the conditions themselves. It will also update on user location changes. The controller basically receives user information, condition information, etc. It retrieves any inputted information from the view. So if a input is put into an input field in the view, the controller will interpret that information. It also handles, the saving of the data. It calls the UI map kit and handles user interactions such as button clicks and things like that. Um, so the controller actually communicates with the view. The view and the model, they do not communicate unless through the controller. So that's good. The view itself is just what the user sees, the UI. So colors, buttons, things like that. But the view doesn't have control over any of the actual actions taken or things of that nature. It's basically just cosmetic things. That is what the view controls. So when you see the storyboards and the splash screen, things like that will be consistent with the view. Capabilities and limitations. Well, I believe that there are many capabilities and many pros to this app. For example, as I explained before, it will have a table view of conditions which the user will be able to keep track of and not forget the conditions. It will also contain a web view with health-related articles to help live healthier lives. Lastly, it will include a map which shows them all of the hospitals in their area. So I'm basically just reiterating the points which I made earlier when I was showing the MVC and the class diagram. Now, some of the limitations are that they cannot retrieve information about their conditions through the app, so they put in the information themselves. I would later like to incorporate that. I actually attempted to do this through APIs, and that's another limitation which I ran into, is that there are so many APIs out there which would have been useful, and I would like to have used one which pulls up extensive information about a condition. Unfortunately, none of the ones which I found suitable were free, or they required a application process for me to be able to use them, to apply to get a key, basically, which I could not do. Now, some of the lessons I learned while designing this app, and there are many, many, many of them. I learned how to, style the UI, how to style the buttons, add the rounded buttons, the colors, the pictures for the tab bar. I learned how to add little icons on the bottom. Learned how to incorporate the tab bar itself, because before I was just using a navigation controller with a storyboard with a view controller that basically had a bunch of buttons which would navigate to the other views. But the tab bar is much more nice looking and efficient. Now, I also learned more extensively how to use core data and table views and what that means. I learned how to use API calls, which was very useful, in order to display information on the app. Before, I had a very basic understanding, but this app helped me, push that to the next level. I learned how to use MapKit to display points of interest based on keywords and other information on the map, how to use WebView and display websites, how to display images properly, and there are many, many more things. This is just a small fraction of what I learned. And also keep in mind, many of these things I have learned throughout the whole class itself, but since you are working on the project throughout the whole class, I can include them in things I've learned while doing this project. Some of my suggestions for improvement, I think for the most part, this project helped me a lot as far as iOS development. Some of the things I would do is add more emphasis on Cocoa Pods because when I was doing research on Cocoa Pods, I was not aware of how useful and how powerful they are. But now I'm aware of that, and I think more emphasis needs to be put on those, and they should be incorporated into the app because they're very useful, especially for enterprise apps. For me, once again, I mentioned this before, it was very hard to find an API to use. There are websites that show you a list of APIs, but once again, not many of them are free, or they have too much information, or not enough, or you need to apply for a key. Well, that is everything. I basically covered all of the steps. Thank you very much. So here's my app. Basically, I'm already past the splash screen portion, so we're here on the map view. I allowed it to receive my location, and now you can see here, these are the hospitals which are near you. And if you click this button, it will show you, I'm not in San Francisco, but my laptop's location is defaulted to San Francisco, so that's why it's saying I'm there. And if you look at the map, this is also in San Francisco as well. So you can see all the hospitals in the location. That's good. We'll tab over to the health articles tab. And you can see the little nice icons here, plus sign, book, a little stethoscope. So these are some articles. As you can see, you can scroll down and there's a bunch of them. You can click on stuff. You can click on like articles from 2015. You have ads and stuff. Okay, this is the medical condition. So as you can see, when you click plus, there is a notification controller, and it'll ask you for your information. So condition, thirsty. I don't know what else to do. So yes, I'm thirsty and I need water. That is the description of my condition. So we add that and we can see it here. And now if I scroll to the left, it'll delete it. And that's basically it. A simple app that took hours and hours of work. So I hope you appreciate it and everything is good. Thank you.